One introduction RAWSEP View: the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to residents against wood smoke emission particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, residents against wood smoke emission particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025 and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Web 57DHXWR August 21st, 2025 electricity cost increases 10% after clean energy rollbacks. In episode 57DHXWR 1 Minnesota interview with Dr. Michael Osterholm, the director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, he is also one author of the book The Big One, How We Must Prepare for Future Deadly Pandemics, which will be out in early September. 2nd Kennedy Jr. cancels nearly $500 million in mRNA vaccine contracts. That kind of shot was first used during the COVID-19 pandemic, but the health secretary has been sharply critical of the technology. 3 Maine RAWSEP View Democrats would like Democrat Maine Governor Janet Mills to oppose Republican incumbent Susan Collins for her Senate seat. From the article headline, In Maine, a Democrat and political novice named Graham Platner makes a long-shot bid to oust Collins for RFK, Junior Medicine and Science. Wegovy gets FDA approval from MASH, the Food and Drug Administration. Approved the weight loss drug Wegovy to treat an increasingly prevalent liver disease on Friday. 5 Trump fear, I want to try and get to heaven. Trump gets reflective on Fox and Friends. The New York Times RAWSEP View, Trump apparently thinks he will get to heaven if he receives a Nobel Peace Prize for a Ukraine and Russia plan with the MAGA stamp of approval. If his version of a heaven is a hell according to a good person, then Trump may be right. The list of actions that will surely shoot Trump straight to a deserved hell upon his death are long, and he has taken many of those cruel and unnecessary actions in the last 7 months. Trump is apparently not musing on his many actions that are morally indefensible. Trump musing on whether he will enter the heavenly gates at all is beyond ironic. 6 Alaska Sandpoint, Trump and budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. Rural America costs a lot of money. Trump cuts are decimating a radio station at the edge of the world. 7 Electricity cost increases 10% after clean energy rollbacks. Cost of living increases for the average voter. 8 Europe, air pollution from wood-burning wildfire smoke far more dangerous to health than thought, say scientists. Main content. 1 Minnesota interview with Dr. Michael Osterholm, the director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota. He is also one author of the book The Big One, How We Must Prepare for Future Deadly Pandemics, which will be out in early September. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. PBS Newsletter August 6, 2025. Many public health experts and scientists say they are stunned by the Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. decision to cancel nearly $500 million in federal funding for future vaccine development. mRNA technology was central in the battle against COVID and can be developed more quickly than traditional vaccines. The latest move comes after the Trump administration already withdrew a multi-million-dollar contract with the biotech company Moderna to develop a bird flu vaccine using what is known as mRNA technology. mRNA vaccines work by using a single strand of genetic code to create a fragment of a virus that sets off the immune response of the body. The mRNA technology was central in the battle against COVID and can be developed more quickly than traditional vaccines. Why is it important to have mRNA vaccines? Where else do they show promise? Dr. Michael Osterholm, well, first of all, we have all just been through a pandemic, and we did see what in fact the COVID vaccine could do to reduce serious illness, hospitalizations, and deaths. But the other kind of pandemic that we are very concerned about, and you noted in the lead-in with regard to bird flu and the possibility that it could be the next influenza pandemic virus. Right now, globally, we have the ability to make enough vaccine in about 15 months after an influenza pandemic started to actually vaccinate only about 1/4 of the entire world. We are still using the 1950s process, using embryonated chicken eggs to grow the virus, and that would be an utter failure now. With the mRNA technology, we believe we could probably have enough vaccine for the whole world within a year, and it would make a big difference. This is a vaccine that would surely be every bit as equivalent of what we currently have, if not better. So there is just one example of where mRNA technology can be helpful. We have a number of other infectious diseases right now, including some cancer vaccine work that is being done with mRNA technology. And I think the thing that was most challenging yesterday with regard to the Kennedy announcement was how he just blatantly said the risks outweigh the benefits without providing any of those data or providing who it was that actually supported that within the administration or in the scientific community. So what does the science actually show? Dr. Michael Osterholm, well, what happens is Kennedy continues to use words that make it sound like he knows what he is talking about. But in fact, he does not. We know in the pandemic that the COVID vaccines were good, but not great. No. Did they stop everyone from getting infected? No. Did they stop everyone from transmitting the virus? No. But did they in fact greatly reduce the number of people who got seriously ill, people who had to be hospitalized, or people who died? They were outstanding in that regard, but that is the same way it is with our current flu vaccines that we have. Even though they are not mRNA, we have the same thing with seasonal flu, so any respiratory virus is going to be a challenge and not based just on this technology. 2 Kennedy Jr. cancels nearly $500 million in mRNA vaccine contracts. That kind of shot was first used during the COVID-19 pandemic, but the health secretary has been sharply critical of the technology. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. PBS Newsletter August 5th, 2025. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has canceled nearly $500 million of grants and contracts for developing mRNA vaccines, the Department of Health and Human Services announced on Tuesday. It is the latest blow to research on this technology. In May, the Department of Health and Human Services revoked a nearly $600 million contract to the drug maker Moderna to develop a vaccine against bird flu. The new cancellations dismayed scientists, many of whom regard mRNA shots as the best option for protecting Americans in a pandemic. This is a bad day for science, said an immunologist at the University of Pennsylvania who has been working to develop an mRNA vaccine against influenza. The health department said in its release that the cancellations affected 22 projects managed by the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority or BARDA, first used during the COVID-19 pandemic by Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna mRNA shots, instruct the body to produce a fragment of a virus which then sets off the immune response of the body, unlike traditional vaccines, which can take years to develop and test. mRNA shots can be made within months and quickly altered as the virus changes. Had we not used these life-saving mRNA vaccines to protect against severe illness, we would have had millions of more COVID deaths, the current Trump health department said. It will favor other types of shots over those using mRNA, like whole cell vaccines. That technology is more than 100 years old. The United States has not used a whole cell vaccine for whooping cough since the 1990s because it was potent but harsh, often setting off high fevers and seizures. Headlines: The New York Times, August 20th, 2025. Air pollution caused by fossil fuel burning will oil demand peak soon. Trump administration does not want to hear it. The New York Times. Artificial intelligence opinion: I may just be kind of ordinary. The New York Times. Artificial intelligence opinion: Amy Klobuchar, I knew AI deepfakes were a problem, then I saw one of myself. The New York Times. California Democrats amid threats from Trump. Adam Schiff forms legal defense fund. The New York Times. California Democrat redistricting RAWSEP View. Gavin Newsom is imitating the foolish and childish style of Trump posts. From the article headline: The Gavin Newsom latest role of social media troll. The New York Times. California Governor Newsom and Democrat redistricting push. Obama endorses the Newsom redistricting proposal as a responsible approach. The New York Times. California Hollywood Republicans and Democrats influence a Republican Maine Senator Susan Collins to get Hollywood treatment at fundraiser featuring Democrats. The New York Times. Climate change beach warnings issued as Hurricane Erin nears the East Coast. The New York Times. Climate change: Hurricane Erin brings rip current risks from Florida to Maine. The New York Times. Climate change opinion: The new American inequality, the cooled versus the cooked. The New York Times. Climate change: outer bands from unusually large Hurricane Erin near North Carolina coast. The New York Times. Climate change: Southern California faces a combustible mix of heat and fire risk. The New York Times. Democrats voter registration: 5 takeaways from the Times analysis of Democratic decline in voter registration. The New York Times. Democrats voter registration: the voter registration crisis of the Democratic Party. The New York Times. 3 Maine RAWSEP View Democrats would like Democrat Maine Governor Janet Mills to oppose Republican incumbent Susan Collins for her Senate seat. From the article headline: In Maine, a Democrat and political novice named Graham Platner makes a long-shot bid to oust Collins. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, August 20th, 2025. Enter Graham Platner, a 40-year-old Democrat oyster farmer and former Marine who served 3 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan, and is set on Tuesday to announce a long-shot challenge to Ms. Collins with a campaign focused on making life better for the Maine working class. Medicine and science: retirement can harm your brain. Here is how to keep it healthy. The New York Times. Medicine and science: preventive actions for healthy living. What ER doctors wish you would avoid. The New York Times. Oklahoma MAGA Republicans versus the blue states. Oklahoma proposes America First test for teachers from New York and California. The New York Times. RFK Jr. Medicine and science: a 1990 measles outbreak shows how the disease can roar back. The New York Times. RFK Jr. Medicine and science: new malaria case prompts testing of mosquitoes in New Jersey. The New York Times. RFK Jr. in opposition by moms urged opinion: moms need to give MAHA a taste of its own medicine. The New York Times. RFK Jr. why COVID cases are up this summer. The New York Times. Texas separation of church and states is challenged, but the challenge is blocked. Judge halts Texas law mandating the 10 Commandments in school. The New York Times. Texas climate change: lack of preparedness for flooding. Camp Mystic parents demand changes before more children are lost. The New York Times. Texas redistricting: see how the redistricting plan of Texas Republicans works. The New York Times. Texas and Trump: Texas House approves redistricting maps, just as Trump wanted. The New York Times. Trump cuts to authorized spending partially blocked. Senate adds guardrails to force Trump to obey spending bills. The New York Times. Trump and Epstein fallout: Justice Department will begin sharing Epstein files on Friday. Top Republican says. The New York Times. Trump and Epstein fallout: RAWSEP View. This unsealing of Epstein grand jury transcripts was not expected to be allowed and may have served as a distraction by Trump to release of actual Epstein files by the Justice Department, as demanded by both Republicans and Democrats. From the headline: NYC judge denies Trump administration request to unseal Jeffrey Epstein grand jury transcripts. The New York Times. Trump and MAGA Republicans RAWSEP View. Some Fox hosts who helped Trump win the election are among his government appointees. From the headline: new details emerge on efforts of Fox hosts to bolster Trump in 2020. The New York Times. Trump and science: the National Security Agency, NSA acting director, tried to save top scientist from purge. The New York Times. Trump opinion: what Trump is really up to in Washington. The New York Times. Trump opinion: would you trust this man with your elections? The New York Times. Trump and the Fed RAWSEP View. If Trump cannot fire the Fed chair, he calls for the resignation of a Fed member. From the headline: Trump demands the Fed Governor Cook resignation. Live updates. The New York Times. Trump and a museum RAWSEP View. One commenter says whether slavery is wrong has been established, and therefore there should be continuing discussion about how slavery was bad. From the headline: says Smithsonian focuses too much on how bad slavery was. The New York Times. Trump tariffs push U.S. businesses into survival mode. The New York Times. Trump and law firms: 2 big law firms said to be doing free work for Trump administration. The New York Times. Trump and universities: history of universities in crisis in the past, what Richard Hofstadter tells us about the American university in crisis. The New York Times. Canada and Mexico look to team up as the Trump tariff threats loom. The New York Times. Norway is a new vacation destination in Norway. Are Caucasians taking a toll? The New York Times. Ukraine at White House summit: a masterclass of diplomacy in courting Trump. The New York Times. Ukraine: can Zelensky trust Trump? The fate of Ukraine may depend on the answer. The New York Times. Ukraine for Trump: flashy summits come first, grunt work comes next. The New York Times. Ukraine opinion, the real meaning of the Zelensky summit was not as it appeared, the New York Times. Ukraine-Russia demands role in guaranteeing the Ukraine post-war security, the New York Times. Ukraine Rubio takes on tricky task of drafting security guarantees for Ukraine, the New York Times. Iran, how much damage did U.S. strikes do to the Iran Fordo nuclear site, the New York Times. Ukraine maps a look at the Russia territorial advances and border demands, the New York Times. Ukraine, what Russia is doing to grab Ukrainian land while it still can, the New York Times. Russia and nearby Georgia, why Georgia, once on the vanguard of democracy, is drifting toward Russia, the New York Times. Headlines, the New York Times, August 19, 2025. Air pollution caused by wood burning, the rainforest being cleared to build your RV, the New York Times. California Republicans file suit seeking to block Newsom redistricting plan, the New York Times. RFK Jr. do food expiration dates really matter, the New York Times. RFK Jr. and Associates opinion, the playbook used to supposedly prove vaccines cause autism, the New York Times. For RFK Jr. medicine and science, Wegovy gets FDA approval for MASH, the New York Times. The Food and Drug Administration approved the weight loss drug Wegovy to treat an increasingly prevalent liver disease on Friday. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, the New York Times, August 19, 2025. Roughly 15 million people, 6% of adults in the United States, have metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis known as MASH. Rates of the disease are rising. The condition occurs when fat builds up in the liver, which can trigger scarring, cell damage, and inflammation. MASH can lead to liver cancer and even death. It is also one of the most common reasons Americans seek liver transplants. Wegovy, which is a weekly injection, is now approved for adults with MASH and moderate to advanced levels of fibrosis or excessive scar tissue in the liver. The drug is not intended for people with cirrhosis, a condition marked by severe liver scarring and damage. Novo Nordisk, the company that makes Wegovy, and its sister drug Ozempic, asked regulators to greenlight the new approval after submitting data from a highly anticipated clinical trial. In the study, around 63% of people who took the drug saw fat and inflammation clear up in their livers without worsening liver scarring, compared to about 34% of participants on a placebo. Texas Representative Democrat Nicole Collier slept on the House floor in protest after she returned from out of state, the New York Times. 5 Trump fear, I want to try and get to heaven. Trump gets reflective on Fox and Friends, the New York Times. RAWSEP View, Trump apparently thinks he will get to heaven if he receives a Nobel Peace Prize for a Ukraine and Russia plan with the MAGA stamp of approval. If his version of a heaven is a hell according to a good person, then Trump may be right. The list of actions that will surely that shoot Trump straight to a deserved hell upon his death are long, and he has taken many of those cruel and unnecessary actions in the last 7 months. Trump is apparently not musing on his many actions that are morally indefensible. Trump musing on whether he will enter the heavenly gates at all is beyond ironic. Trump and universities. Trump wants universities to show him the money or no deal, the New York Times. Ukraine, how Europe learned to speak so Trump would listen, the New York Times. Ukraine, France, and the United States. Trump caught whispering to Macron about a possible deal on Ukraine, the New York Times. Ukraine opinion, the mind-boggling intrusiveness of Donald J. Trump, the New York Times. Ukraine opinion, the real meaning of the Zelensky summit was not as it appeared, the New York Times. Ukraine opinion, Ukraine diplomacy reveals how un-American Trump is, the New York Times. Ukraine, will Putin meet with Zelensky to end the Ukraine war? The New York Times. Ukraine opinion, the Zelensky return to the White House, the New York Times. Headlines, The Guardian, August 20th, 2025. Air pollution from fossil fuel burning, Trump-fueled gas boom has Gulf Coast communities on edge. We will keep fighting fossil fuels, The Guardian. 6 Alaska Sandpoint, Trump and budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. Rural America costs a lot of money. Trump cuts are decimating a radio station at the edge of the world. KSDP brings vital information from tsunami warnings to salmon levels to an Alaskan town of 600 people. Can it survive losing 70% of its budget in federal support? Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, August 20th, 2025. In Sandpoint, Alaska, the radio dial is mostly empty for a commercial broadcaster running a station in this Aleutian Island fishing town of about 600 people. Just is not worth the cost of doing business. But KSDP, the local public radio station for Sandpoint, is a community anchor bringing listeners music, emergency alerts, live color commentary of high school sports, state and local news without a newspaper specifically serving the town. The station is the resource for residents for all things local. On August 1st, for example, KSDP hosted an interview with local fish biologist Matthew Keys. Asking the questions was Austin Roof, general manager of the station. Roof served as a stand-in for the laborers listening at home or aboard their ships, asking about the noticeably low catches early that summer. Keys told listeners that while June was among the lowest harvests on record, July had been much better. He then announced the fishing schedule for early August. There would be no fishing allowed for 60 hours straight, as officials monitored fish populations. After that, anglers could tune to the radio daily for specific opening and closing times in a region where livelihoods are tied to this turbulent and highly regulated industry. This information gave residents a chance to plan their summer of labor. Greenlee says he does not know what will happen to his position. His role as the shared reporter for KSDP and 2 other local stations is funded by a grant from CPB, but his livelihood, he says, is the least of his concerns. I am more saddened for the nation than for myself. I'm worried about the community. I am worried about Sandpoint, he says. As for him, the intrepid local reporter braving the elements to cover stories from fishing to fracking, he says, I go back to bartending. Climate change, Californians brace for worst multi-day heat wave of the year. California, The Guardian. Climate change, monkeys falling from trees and baking barnacles, how heat is driving animals to extinction. Global development, The Guardian. 7 Electricity cost increases 10% after clean energy rollbacks. Cost of living increases for the average voter. Green energy rollbacks, Trump tariffs and green energy rollbacks push household electricity bills up 10%. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian. August 20th. 2025 studies have found that the Trump pro-fossil fuel anti-renewable energy policies will raise prices. Trump administration Trump tariffs and green energy rollbacks push household electricity bills up 10%. The U.S. Energy Secretary said energy prices could hurt GOP in midterms, but blamed Democrats for price increases. The Guardian, August 19, 2025. Household electricity bills have increased by 10% since Donald Trump returned to the White House. A new report has found, with its authors highlighting the impact of the Trump data center boosterism and cuts to clean energy projects as part of the cause. The analysis comes as the U.S. Energy Secretary said the momentum of the Obama-Biden policies for sure that destruction is going to continue in the coming years. That momentum is pushing prices up right now. And who is going to get blamed for it? We are going to get blamed because we are in office. Trump has repeatedly promised to lower utility bills, but studies have found that the Trump pro-fossil fuel anti-renewable energy policies will raise prices. A July report from climate think tank Energy Innovation, for instance, found that the Republican spending mega bill that the president signed last month could increase wholesale electricity prices by as much as 70%, largely due to its repeal of many Biden-era green energy incentives. According to the new report from advocacy group Climate Power, which is based on an analysis of data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, those price increases are already beginning to take hold. Republicans are fueling an energy crisis and inflicting a massive utility bill hike on Americans across the country, said a Climate Power senior advisor. This is nothing short of a betrayal of their own voters. Families are losing jobs while their bills climb, all because Republicans would rather protect their donors than lower costs. The average price of household energy increased by roughly 10%, from 15.95 cents per kilowatt hour in January 2025 to 17.47 cents per kilowatt hour in May 2025. Climate Power found household gas prices have risen by a stunning 56% over the same period. Electricity prices were 6% higher in May 2025 than in the same month of last year, while gas prices rose by 8% over the same period. Some regions have seen even higher spikes in cost. In New Jersey, rates skyrocketed by 20% in June. More recent moves against the environment from Trump threaten to further increase prices. Climate Power says last week, for instance, the Treasury Department released a rewrite of decades-old standards for how renewable energy projects can qualify for cost-cutting credits, potentially threatening the viability of many clean energy developments. Although the president promised to spur job growth, those policies are also reducing employment. The new report found since his election, 64,000 jobs in renewable energy sectors have already been cut or paused. Companies have canceled, delayed, or laid off staff at 123 energy projects in 33 states, representing over $33.87 billion in lost investment. The report says, adding that the gutting will also continue to increase utility prices. This report details just how badly this bill is hurting Americans, and we are going to make sure they know who to blame when they open higher utility bills this month. Texas Republicans passed gerrymandered congressional map requested by Trump. Texas, The Guardian. Trump money. Trump has bought more than $100 million in bonds, while president disclosure shows Donald Trump. The Guardian. Trump and retirement plans. Trump signs order to allow crypto and real estate investments in retirement plans. Trump administration. The Guardian. Headlines. Guardian, August 19, 2025. 8. Europe, air pollution from wood-burning wildfire smoke far more dangerous to health than thought, say scientists. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, August 19, 2025. Wildfire smoke far more dangerous to health than thought, say scientists. Deaths from short-term exposure to fine particulates spewed by forest fires underestimated by 93%. Choking smoke spewed by wildfires is far more dangerous than previously thought. A new study has found, with death tolls from short-term exposure to fine particulates underestimated by 9%. Researchers found that 535 people in Europe died on average each year between 2004 and 2022 as a result of breathing in the tiny toxic particles known as PM 2.5 that are released when wildfires rage. Under standard methods, which assume PM 2.5 from wildfires is as deadly as from other sources such as traffic, they would have expected just 38 deaths a year. The study comes as wildfires ravage southern Europe, and new data from EU Fire Monitor shows that 2.2 million acres have burned so far in 2025, breaking records for this time of year. They have pumped out more than twice the amount of PM 2.5 that wildfires have generated on average by this point in the year over the last 2 decades. Previously, people assumed the same toxicity for wildfire particles and all particles, said an environmental epidemiologist at the Barcelona Institute for Global Health. IS Global. The paper she has written with collaborators shows evidence that although it happens less often, the health impact for the same amount of particles is stronger for wildfire particles. Dirty air is one of the biggest threats to human health, and research suggests wildfires are a significant contributor to the vast death toll. In December, a study attributed 1.53 million deaths around the world each year to short-term and long-term exposure to air pollution from wildfires. The IS Global researchers, who looked only at the short-term effects of the smoke for which the evidence base is stronger, combined daily mortality records from 32 European countries with estimates of PM 2.5 pollution from 2004 to 2022. Using models that account for an expected lag in deaths, they found exposure to wildfire smoke increased the risk of death in the following week for every extra microgram of PM 2.5 fouling 1 cubic meter of air. They found that all-cause mortality rose by 0.7%, respiratory mortality went up by 1%, and cardiovascular mortality rose by 0.9%. Devastating blazes, compounded by relentless heat, have killed several people across southern Europe and the Balkans in recent weeks, but deaths from the toxic fumes released by the fires are likely to go unnoticed. Smoke can affect populations far away from the fires, so Many more people will be exposed to smoke than the immediate physical threat of the flames. The researchers said the study was limited by the lack of variability in the data on exposure to fire-related particulate matter, which made it harder to estimate how the health of people responded based on age and sex. Toxic pollution from wildfires creeps into the homes of more than 1 billion people a year. A study found in Maine concluded that air purifiers were an effective but expensive solution to indoor air pollution, which can be nearly 3 times higher on wildfire days than normal days, even when all windows and doors are closed. The Iberian Peninsula has been hit particularly hard this year, with Spain and Portugal accounting for the bulk of the burned area. In Europe, the fire belt would move north in the coming years and decades. What we are witnessing now will sooner or later occur also in Central and Northern Europe, where we have also seen an aggravation of the fire problem. This is not a Mediterranean problem, but a European one. California Democrat redistricting Republicans sue to block the Newsom fast-track California redistricting plan. California, The Guardian. Science and climate change voices arguing that climate action is a waste of time are getting louder. Here is why they are wrong. Adam Morton, The Guardian. Headlines. Other media. August 20th. 2025 air pollution from wood burning. Burning Man may have another rainy year. The National Weather Service says California redistricting Democrat. A wake-up call. Newsom's Trump trolling is riling Republicans. Medicine and science. We asked an expert about the most striking cases of celeb Ozempic face. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Findings by Oxford University show that GLP-1 drugs can reduce not only deeper facial fat, which provides youthful volume, but also a special layer under the skin called white adipose tissue (WAT). This tissue contains stem cells that produce growth factors, cytokines, and hormones essential for skin health. Once that tissue decreased, it affects both the structure of the skin and its ability to rejuvenate. Medicine and science. Why valley fever has surged over 1,200 in California since 2000. Trump fear of afterlife and worry about getting to heaven sparks fresh health concerns as president admits, "I am not doing well." Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies, which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American. Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove. International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.